So you also speak widely about transition to adulthood. How old are you now?
I am 21 plus 12.
Okay. So, what was transition to adulthood like for you?
It's interesting. Puberty hit me like a ton of bricks. I went from a basically 5'9" to 6'3" within 2.5 years. So there was a lot of growing pains when it came to my transition to adulthood. Uh, Also, at the same time, I didn't know anything about what life would be like after high school. I received no transitional planning to prepare me for the next steps, especially when it came to college, because I got accepted into all 15 colleges I applied to. And nobody ever told me things like, oh, you're not going to get an IEP in college. I assumed. I went up to my disability support specialist and I told her, if you could give me that IEP, I'll be right out the door. And she was like, you don't get an IEP in college. You get 504 reasonable accommodations. I was like, cool. I don't know what that
Mm.
means.
Just to clarify, Kerry, IEP is individualized education plan that students will
Yes.
typically get when they're in the public school.
Yes, correct. Yes. Especially with a disclosed diagnosis. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah. So I mean, that was definitely a struggle. I had to become my own self advocate and really self advocate for my wants and needs. Um, and no, there was no blueprint on what that looked like. So that was definitely a challenge. But once I started to come out about my autism diagnosis, it really started to open up. People started providing me more information, especially on the college level. And disclosure was one of the big keys to my overall development, especially during the transition to adulthood.
Were you not being as open about your diagnosis before?
It wasn't necessarily that I wasn't being open, but it was simply that everyone would look at me and they would say, Kerry, you have autism, but you don't look like you have autism. And having this quote unquote invisible disability, if you will, really never made autism come up as a part of a conversation unless I was needing accommodations.
I
So
see.
yeah, so it was literally just that. I was really not necessarily close minded about it. It just really never came up unless it was for accommodations.
Hmm. Got it. So, what do you think could be done better to support individuals with this transition?
Peer mentoring would be the number one thing. I looked up to people with disabilities like Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, NBA basketball players who had attention deficit disorder, ADHD, and I would look at them for inspiration when I was having my own learning challenges. But I really didn't know anyone with autism. I didn't know the Temple Grandins at the time. They still weren't very mainstream in the community. And that was a challenge. So I
Mm.
definitely think, and that's part of my nonprofit, KFM. I provide mentoring, life coaching, and training for those with disabilities in their transition to adulthood because I realized that was something I didn't get when I was a kid. And not only somebody to show them what the future could look like, but also to be a friend and to make sure that they're not feeling isolated, especially during times like we're living in today.
Yeah. Do you live alone?
Yes, I've been living independently throughout most of my adult years, living in the dorms and then off-campus apartment, and now living in Hoboken, New Jersey, in my own apartment for the past 4.5 years
Hmm. Yeah, that's great that you've learned some skills along the way that have helped you
now. Yeah,
to support
absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah, and I've given a TED talk on what happens to children with autism when they become adults with autism. So if anyone is listening in and simply wants to gain more information, definitely check that out on YouTube.
You've been watching Autism Knows No Borders. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think in the comments section. Click here to watch this interview in its entirety. You can also find us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in each week for engaging conversations of how people across the globe are inspiring change and building community. Thanks for watching. Take care.